Hello, my friends. Welcome to our conversations once again with luminaries, leaders, influencers, and people who are making a difference in the world. Today, I have a very special guest, and he's my brother. And my brother has been Dean of Education at Harvard Medical School. He's a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. You'll see his credentials. So he's been on this program a few times before. Last time was about the magical elixir called coffee. And he has a new book. Sanjiv, please show the book that you have, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Deepak. So the book I've co-authored with Najera, and we're waiting for him to join us, is called Ignite the Fire Within, Master Your Speaking and Writing.
What inspired you to write this book?
So what happened is about 3.5 years ago, Rick and I were invited to speak in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I gave a keynote on happiness and living with purpose. He gave a talk and we just hit it off, and we would connect every week or two and speak. And then he said, I want to work with you. Let's do something together. I said, let's write a book. You know, he is a very skilled, talented writer, producer, actor, director. His plays have performed on Broadway. And he's been doing that for 30, 40 years. And he teaches writing. And, you know, I've been speaking and writing for the last 40 years as well. So between us, we have 80 or 90 years of experience. And we said, this will be fun. We learn a lot in the process. And so it was during the COVID lockdown. There was so much extra time. We would connect by Zoom. And we actually wrote the book in less than 6 months, working about 2 or 3 hours virtually every single day.
What should people expect when they read the book? Give us some idea on the tools.
Yeah, so, you know, Steve Jobs once said, the most powerful people in the world are storytellers. So whether you're writing or whether you're speaking, tell a story. People absolutely relate to it. You can go to an ancient temple or a cave, 5,000 years old, and you'll see an etch, you know, a little drawing etched into the mountain. And it's that of a mother by the fire making the food. The father's helping, kindling the food. The grandfather is sitting there surrounded by 3 kids telling stories. So how do we get better storytellers? One of the tools in the book is from a talk I give at Harvard Med School and at University of Massachusetts. And it's called How to Give a Good TED Talk. What are the principles of public speaking? What is the importance of animation, looking, smiling? What I call the pregnant pause. If I say adversity is a terrible thing to waste, you're listening and you get it. But if instead I say adversity is a terrible thing to waste, there was that little pause after thing. People actually lean forward, expectant pause. So many, many tools like that. We tell a lot of stories, and the chapters, I think, flow very well, from saying how to say yes, to courage, to vulnerability, to just get started, start writing.
That's fascinating. You know, I just wanted to say something on stories, which has really fascinated me, because according to current anthropological models, there were about 8 types of humans till about 40,000 years ago. We call ourselves Homo sapiens, the wise ones, but we were humble enough to give us ourselves that name, and then we gave names to other humanoids, Neanderthals, Floroenses, etc. And apparently this was the human family, like just like you have the cat family, going from, your house cat all the way to panthers and lions and tigers and cheetahs and leopards. One family, several species. And then one species had something happen called the cognitive revolution. This was 40,000 years ago. And basically what the cognitive revolution was, that this species, Homo sapiens, created a language for narrative. All the other species had only three kinds of languages: mating calls, survival calls, danger calls, and food calls, nothing else. Then we created this language for stories. And then, of course, one of the stories was money, another was colonialism, and then there was nation states, and then latitude and longitude and Greenwich Mean Time. Remember, not Botswana Mean Time, Greenwich Mean Time. And we created the human experience of the universe through language. So it was very troubling to me. Did we create language, or did language get created as part of the evolution of cosmos? And, of course, language exists in every culture. And there are nuances to language. You just mentioned the nuance: syntax, grammar, pause, volume, tenor. This is human, very, very human. And it's linked to gestures and facial expressions and tone of voice and body language as well. So when a child is born, how does it acquire language just by listening? It doesn't matter if the child is, our own grandson, Krishu, Chinese, Spanish, English, smattering of Hindi with the right syntax, grammar, just by listening. So, at least I have come to the conclusion that language itself and storytelling is actually a universal phenomenon in a particular species, for the universe to actually, in a way, to explain itself to itself. Now, that's the big picture, but what you're saying, makes total sense. To be human is to have a story. And, if you don't have a story, then you're probably not fully self-aware of your own story.
Deepak, I'm privileged to be a visiting professor in medicine at many academic institutions. And when I go, I, of course, meet many of the faculty one-on-one. And so the last visit before COVID was University of Washington, Seattle. And there were 8 hepatologists at the university. And I met with each one of them and asked each one of them a question. Have you written a book? And most often the answer is no, right? Most physicians, academic physicians, publish, but they don't write a book. I say, have you given a TED talk? No. Are you passionate about something? Yes. I said, you have a book in you. You have a TED talk in you. I come back 10 months later, 2 out of the 8 have written a book. And they say, Sanjiv, thank you for planting the seed. And one of them is originally from Cyprus. He went to Oxford on a scholarship. And now he's working at the University of Washington, Seattle, VA. I couldn't put the manuscript down. He wrote a book about 20 stories and the lessons he learned from 20 patients of his, 20 veterans. So each one of us has a story to tell. And now I encourage interns, residents, medical students, when I work with them, write a book. Don't worry who'll publish it. Start with a blog. Just jot notes down. Don't worry about grammar, syntax. Siddhartha Mukherjee was a fellow in oncology at the Mass General and Dana-Farber. And he decided to write a blog on cancer. And then it grew and grew and grew. And he said, maybe this is a book. And he wrote the book, The Emperor of All Maladies, right? A biography of cancer. First book. he gets the Pulitzer Prize.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, that in itself a great story for other storytellers and to be inspired. Sanjiv has a book. Sanjiv and Rick. Rick, if you are, we can see you. So,
Rick, can you hear us?
Oh, good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good.
I'm in the Tesla studio.
Yeah, do you have the book? Did you bring the book with you?
I was running down to the Tesla studio, which is my card. You got the book right there.
No, yeah. Show the book once again. It's very important. Just read the title, please.
Ignite the Fire Within, Mastery Your Speaking and Writing, Sanjiv Chopra, Rick Najera. And on the cover, endorsement by Deepak Chopra. This is a great instruction manual, not only for writing and speaking, but for mastery of life. Thank you, Deepak. That was very wonderful.
No, mastery of life, because your life is a story.
It is.
In our tradition, we call it karma. Rick, you've been listening to this conversation, and you're a co-author of this book. Tell us what Sanjiv has already kind of enlightened us, but please tell us what people should expect on reading this amazing book.
To be inspired. That is one of the idea that our dharma, as Sanjiv has told me. We met by serendip, as they say, in Mexico. COVID hit, and we both said, let's do something. And we used the principle of yes and Sanjiv said, let's write a book. And it never occurred to me. And so I said, yes, let's write a book. So we met 3 to 4 hours a day during COVID, during the lockup, and just wrote. And we wrote our philosophy and what we think. And what we're finding in this book that's inspiring other people to tell their story. It's the time when I was a child, I had this horrible dyslexia and I'd flunked kindergarten. I was a writer, I wasn't a speller. So a teacher took me aside and said, why don't you tell me a story and I'll make it a book. And she made a cloth book for me. And the story was The Colored Boy, a boy that turned every color in the world and no one knew what to do with him because they couldn't be prejudiced against him because he was every color. And I thought of myself years later reading that book, that colored boy was me, living in La Mesa and being Mexican American and not quite fitting in the mainstream, but I learned to see how important the individual was and telling my story, and that empowered me. And I remember as a child, it changed my life. And as I've grown in my career and all the things I've done, I've always remembered one simple theme is that your story is important. Your story is important. And that's what I think the book does. It really inspires people to begin to write, to begin to speak, to communicate, to tell their story. Because once their story is told, they realize their own importance. And every one of these stories, people have taken our courses and worked with us. We've had people write books, and do this incredible things. I say we are ordinary people that do extraordinary things. And that's what I think the book is about. Getting ordinary people like myself and all of us to do extraordinary things because we have that capacity in us to do that.
Thank you, Rick. Of course, I don't think there's anybody that we can call ordinary, not even a mosquito. I mean, it's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
Every existence is a miracle. Sanjiv, since you have the book with you, can you read the chapter headings?
Yeah, so the first chapter is Say Yes to You. Chapter 2, Your Story. Chapter 3, Failure and Adversity. Chapter 4, The Art of Listening. Chapter 5, Vulnerability. Chapter 6, Less is Best, Always. Chapter 7, Your Story Arc. And Chapter 8, Courage. So, each one brings to mind a quote or two. Less is best. Mark Twain once said, I was going to write you a short letter. I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one instead. Recently, I was invited by the American Gastroenterology Association annual meeting, 15,000 people, to give a talk on lifelong learning in gastroenterology and hepatology. And there were 3 other speakers, and then we had a panel discussion. So I gave my talk. I started with a story. I ended with a quote by Gandhi. And then during the panel discussion, when the first question came to me, I said, this was a daunting task, 15 minutes. I mean, most of our talks are 30, 45, 50, 60 minutes. And I told the quote by Mark Twain. So it was very well received. But the quote by Gandhi, which I ended with, is absolutely amazing. One of my favorite quotes. It says, live as though you were going to die tomorrow. Learn as if you're going to live forever. So I think people will learn from this book. We learned a lot. Rick and I learned immensely as we wrote the book, researched.
We both are from very different, parts of life, I guess you would say. In terms of vocation, I'm the artist and the writer and the producer in Hollywood, and do a stuff. And Sanjiv, a man of medicine and science. But we're also from different religions and different parts of the world and all that. But we found a commonality in each other of the same things we appreciate and want to see others enjoy. And in the end, there's far more similarities between us all than differences. And it was wonderful to work with Sanjiv. He has a great sense of humor, one of the best sense of humors I've encountered. And he's a man that we deal with whatever adversity. Like today, where I'm staying in San Diego, the condos web went out for some reason. So here I'm in I call it the Tesla studio, talking, because if your objective and your desire is so much, you forget about the perfection, because perfection can be an enemy to art. And even me with my crippling dyslexia and everything else, it was more important for us to do this book. And Sanjiv was going through had something wrong with his hand or whatever, or he was just tricking me to have me type the book out. The worst speller in the world is typing this book out with Sanjiv and I talking over a phone, and we had a great time. We
had a great time. Rick has an uncanny encyclopedic knowledge of literature, about history, and he's performed plays, directed plays. But when he would write, sometimes, actually quite often, I'd say, Rick, I have no idea what you're saying. No idea what you're saying. There's no grammar, there's no punctuation. It doesn't make any sense to me. He says, Sanjiv, what I'm saying is, and then he would articulate it so brilliantly, I'd be blown away. So we had so much fun. And then Rick came with his son and stayed with us for a few days and showed him around, went to Harvard, and he also learned meditation from Amrita. So we've become very, very dear friends.
Yes, beautiful stories right there, very inspiring. Rick, you said we come from different religions. They're just different stories of the same experience.
Exactly.
And everybody's kind of going to war around stories right now. Every war in the world is around a story, whether it's communism or capitalism or whatever ideology or religion. So how can we create stories that we all agree on? And, recently I've been reading something called Emergence, the science of emergence in social sciences. And they say that when you have diversity, when you leverage each other's strengths, when you have a shared vision, and you have emotional and spiritual bonding, then you can give birth to a new story. And certainly right now, our collective story is climate change and pandemics and social and economic injustice and extinction of species, eco-destruction, mass weapons of destruction. It's a story that actually, if we don't deeply listen, one of the chapters in your book, then you were sleepwalking ourselves to extinction. So it's time to wake up and write a new story which has more universality. And I don't think anyone would not want to have a story of their life that is inspiring to others. So very grateful to both of you, and good luck. And happy trails.
Okay. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Deepak.
Thank you, Sanjiv.
Take care.